This is another in the first read series where I read a poem by a poet I don't know or know very little about and just read the poem for the first time for the sheer joy of it. So I don't read this to teach it or to explain it. I just go through and kind of document my experience with it. It might be completely off. I might come back and read it differently. If I had to teach it, I might read a lot more of the poet's work so I would kind of get a feel for it. But in this case, it's the sheer joy of it. So this time is from Lauren Samblanet. I hope I'm saying the last name correctly, Samblanet. And it's in The Tiny. The Tiny is a great little mag. If you haven't seen it, love it. Nice editorial choices with it. Anyway, Lauren Samblanet. So I picked these at random, and I like poetry with form that plays around. So I didn't pick the first one on this page. I just picked this one. I haven't read it yet. I just like the look of it. It's in 3 parts. It's Fortitude for Z. I don't know who Z is. It's fairly obviously an open form, so I don't really have to play with that much. There's clearly, a lot of anaphora. It's just a repetition of beginning lines over and over and over. So I'm not going to look for traditional form here. If I see some traditional techniques, I might point them out. But for now, I'm just going to read it. So section 1 is, and it looks like they're in, this first section is in 3-line stanzas. So Fortitude. What happens to a body when it's opened, when it's freezing, when it's ripping or ripped open? Love the sound of this. I don't even, sometimes I just like the sound of something, so I don't get too caught up in the meaning of it, but love the sound of this. A nice repetition of the what, the when, the ripping, the INGs here, the R's coming back. What happens to a body when it's opened, when it's freezing, when it's ripping, ripped open? And it's hard to know what to do with this right now. What happens to a body? It's a question. It's not a question mark, but it feels like it's questioning, but why would you want to do this? Why would you want to open a body when it's freezing? Rip it open? Are we talking about a human body or an animal body? We don't really know yet. What happens, or it just says the next one. I put in the what there. It just says, happens to a body when it's tundra, when it's frozen, when it's snowing and barefooted walks through a town. This is very like a brutal scene for a body, anybody, a human body or an animal body to walk through in this cold, freezing, and barefooted. It feels like it's human with the barefooted thing, but it's not a scene we would usually see. What happens. I'm adding the what again, but it literally just says happens. Happens to a body when it's bloodied. It's liquid. It's frozen open and glass broken by stone. It's a weird fragility of the body here, like glass broken by stone when it's bloodied and it's liquid. It's a very harsh image. What does happen to that body that way? Why would it be that way? Is the question I want to ask if I saw somebody walking down the street this way is, what happened to you? But this is more focused on the body and what happens to the body. Happens to a body when it's a boy barefooted and walking through a town when it's snowed, when it's bloodied, when it's ripped and it's open. And this is ripped and open again. It's ripping and ripped open beginning. Now it's ripped and it's open. It's like the body's been opened, and it's gendered in this stanza. It's been gendered so that we have it's a boy barefooted and it's snowing. And there's the bloodiness again. These are repeating images. Happens to a body when it's polar. It's ice capped and creaking. How can the body be polar itself except for having become so cold this way? It's shivering and flaking. Happens to a body when it's a girl trekking in the tundra, when it's frostbitten and frozen over, when it's barefoot and walks in the tundra to a town. And this has been gendered again, but opposite kind of is a girl in this case trekking through the tundra. And there's all these repeating images of tundra and barefoot and bloodiness and ice and snow. It's coming back over and over and over with this. I'm not sure what to make of this completely. I love these images and the sound of it. This poet has a beautiful sound to her words, so I'm really just enjoying the sound of it. And it's kind of interesting, unpoetic thing to write about, this bloodied, snow-covered, ice-covered, cold, cut-open, bloodied body. Happens to a body when it's stabbed by a fork. It's a belly, and it's open. It's open. The body's open. It is a belly. The body's a belly, and it's open. It's hands inside a belly that is open. This is kind of weird, a double image of the hands inside of a belly that's been opened up, and then you have the stabbing with a fork. It's as if the body's been stabbed with a fork here, like somebody's going to eat the body or something. Happens to a body when it's freezing and it's a girl. We have the girl image again when it's walking in polar tundra, when it's open or opening. Like, what's going on with this body when it's breaking open this way? This brings up so many things this could be. I don't know that we get enough information into what it is in this case, but it's interesting. Happens to a body when it's zombie-eyed and hungers. It's a boy in the house. It's capable of opening. The whole scene feels almost zombie-like in the beginning, but I'm not sure that's what's happening here. Happens to a body when it's zombie-eyed and hungers. When the body hungers for something. We have this bloody, we have this eating images with a fork. It's a belly earlier. It's capable of opening. Happens to a body when it's freezing and hungers. It's a girl in the tundra. It's fur-booted and walking through tundra and snow. Now we have feet covered in this last one, but it's still walking in the cold and the snow. So a lot of harsh images in this first section. There's this like overwhelming question of what happens to a body in this situation, and we're not really sure. So we switch to section 2. And there's, like I said, a lot of anaphora here. You can see it right away. When a landscape, it looks like all of the lines, they do. All the lines in this section begin with that, although the verb, they shift when the verb comes in. When a landscape offers only darkness, danger and darkness, does this tie into that first section? So are we supposed to be saying what happens to a body when a landscape only offers, or is this a separate section? I'm not sure. When a landscape offers only dangers and darkness, when a landscape is horrific and capable of altering internal bodily states, when the landscape is barren and open, when the landscape offers storm, when the landscape is ice-capped and creaky. I love the sound of this. I tend to not like long strings of anaphora because I think sometimes you can just cut out that and the reader will get it. But I like it in this case. I think it speeds it up. When the landscape offers frozen rock and snow, like in the landscape here, it's separate from the body here. The landscape is all of these cold and icy things as vacant, offers blood, ice, and snow hairs. When the landscape is hostile and silence. When the landscape is toothed and clawed, when the landscape offers only nothing, the landscape is the kind of the harshness of it here. When this landscape is uncharted, when the landscape is glaciered, when the landscape offers desired mystery and undesired consequence, when the landscape is embodied and emboldened, when the landscape is northern and holding, when the landscape offers solitude, when the landscape is explored, when the landscape is seen, when the landscape offers only nothing and nothing at all, when the landscape is horrific and capable of altering external bodily states, when the landscape is arctic. You get this very strong sense of coldness, of harshness, of a landscape almost anti-body. Then the last section is what happens to a body when it walks into a landscape and expects no harm. Which is the shortest section, but this question seems to kind of float over the whole point itself. What happens to a body in the landscape when it expects or doesn't expect something to happen, but when it expects no harm? What happens in this kind of arctic and unforgiving landscape? At the end, I'd really like to see this in a series to see how this kind of works out in the rest of the series. The Fortitude idea, like, does this play out for humans existing in an Arctic setting and like getting by with it, getting bloodied and all this stuff, or is it something else? I'm not really sure. But I'd kind of like to see more of it to see how this works. So once again, Lauren Samblanet, great poem. I really like the language here. It makes me really want to read a lot.